Hi, it's Ramsey Dewey over here in Shanghai, China. Welcome to another edition of Q&A with the Coach. A lot of you have been asking me in the comments, how do I leave a question for the next edition of Q&A with the Coach? To which my answer is generally, you just did. It's very simple. Leave a question in the comments down below. I read the comments, guys. Or send me an email at ramseydewey@gmail.com. Sometimes I check my email too. So our first question comes from our friend Mi Vida Loca, who says, Hi, Mr. Ramsey. Actually, it's Mr. Dewey. Ramsey's my first name, but I get where you're going with this. I know this is off topic, but may I know what is your stance regarding no sex before fights? Okay, it's not off topic, my friend. It is a fight-related question. And it's something a lot of people have been arguing about for a very long time. Now, according to all the scientific research that I've seen, it doesn't actually make a lick of difference. So there's science for you. Unless by sex you mean running around all night, spending your energy chasing after a girl or a guy or whatever your fancy is. If you wear yourself out the day before a fight, yeah, that's going to affect you. But the actual act of human copulation, according to science, not so much. Anyway, hope that helps settle things. But if you're going to fight, focus on the fight. If something takes you away from your goal, probably not a good idea before a fight. If it helps you focus on the goal, sure, go for it. Next question. Our next question comes from our friend Michael Sweat, who says, Ramsey, I was wondering how the fighter or his team helps in the psychological recovery of a fighter after a bad beatdown or any loss. Really, this is very hard to deal with for some people, including myself. Hey, me too. Especially when a loss follows a winning championship or defeating a series of high-caliber opponents. Yeah. Combat sports are uniquely different in this regard than other sports. For example, if a basketball team loses the championship game, nobody says, they're done, they got no chin, they got no business there in the ring. You know, like all those buzzwords come out after a fight when a fighter ends up on the losing side. There's something about seeing somebody physically beaten up, physically destroyed, that makes both the onlookers and the person who just took that beatdown feel pessimistic about that outcome. It's not just a game anymore, because it's your body on the line. It's you. So you tend to take it personally when you lose a fight. Like really, really personally, and you should. And that's okay. That's part of the process. Having a team behind you is huge. When I started out in professional prize fighting, I had no team behind me. It was largely an act of desperation, financial desperation. And so I went from amateur taekwondo, from traditional martial arts, taekwondo, karate, things like that, to kickboxing, and I showed up at this venue for a kickboxing match with nobody, no cornerman, no coach. You know, it was just me training by myself. Because that was the state I was in. And I ended up losing this fight, and I was filled with all these weird emotions and feelings afterward, like, man, I just got punched and kicked a lot. I didn't like that, and I didn't like the outcome. I didn't like that I lost the decision in that fight. I didn't like any of it. And I'd never really felt a loss like that before. I'd never been beaten up like that before. So it's one thing losing, and it's another thing getting beaten up and losing. Because if somebody catches you with some technical thing, you can sit back and think, okay, well, next time I'll do this and this and this, and I'll fix it. But when you get beaten up, that's a totally different thing. Totally different mindset. Very different thing to come back to. Bruce Lee said something, I'm going to paraphrase, and I don't quote Bruce Lee a lot in regards to combat sports because he was not a professional fighter, but he did say something really interesting, which I think has helped me in this regard. He said, you must be able to see yourself as a Triton amongst minnows. Triton, the god of the sea, swimming amongst the tiny little insignificant fish. This was in regards to losing and realizing, hey, I'm a mere mortal. I'm beatable on any given day. But you have to make a comeback, and it has to be mental as much as physical. Yeah, you got to correct the mistakes. You got to figure out how to fix what you did wrong. But you have to come back unbreakable and unbeatable up here in your mind, right here in your heart. People always talk about fighters with heart. And that often is a euphemism for fighters who suck and take a beating and don't get knocked out, but they just get beaten down and beaten down. And that's a terrible use of that word, because I like that expression, because I know fighters with heart, with real heart. Fighters who win fights, lots of fights. For example, my student Roy Swan, this Chinese guy, came into my gym a long time ago, and he was fat. He was out of shape. He was not an athlete. He was a video game programmer. And he had just finished his project, making some game, and he had some time off, so he wanted to take up a sport. And he thought mixed martial arts sounded like fun. And on day one, he gassed out after 1 minute of the warm-up. Simple movements did him in, and I thought, oh man, he's done. But he came back the next day, and he did a little bit more, and this happened every day. He would do a little bit more, and a little bit more, until finally he was able to do the whole warm-up and then participate in the class, and then eventually finish a whole class without feeling like he was going to die. This was a show of heart. It's people without heart, when the going gets tough, when their body starts saying, I hate this, they give up. But Roy came back. And one day, Roy came back and he showed me a video of him in a boxing tournament. And he showed me a trophy that he had won. And I was confused, like, Roy, why didn't you tell me about this boxing tournament? And he said something along the lines of, I didn't tell you because I didn't think that you would think I was ready yet. But I knew that I was ready. And he not only won that fight, he knocked his opponents out. And he kept fighting. Had over a dozen boxing matches, won most of them. Had about half dozen kickboxing matches, about a half dozen Muay Thai matches, 2 amateur mixed martial arts fights, jiu-jitsu tournament. Just kept competing. And this guy was not athletically gifted. He was the guy who showed up, and he did the work. And when the going got tough in the gym, in the ring, on the mat, in the cage, whatever it was, he refused to quit. And when he lost, and he didn't lose very often, but when he lost, I could see it affected him deeply. He didn't like to lose, and I didn't like to see him lose. But he showed heart in those losses. How? The same way he showed heart in the fights, the same way he showed heart in the gym, he kept going. Until he could stand up again and see himself as a veritable Triton amongst minnows. This was a very humble man. He didn't walk around all cocky like, I'm the best, I'm the god of the mats, I'm the god of the ring. No. This guy understood completely his weaknesses, which is super important. But he did not let his weaknesses define him. Roy is one of my heroes in a lot of ways. My student became one of my heroes because he exemplified that expression. He has heart. So what must you do? You must have heart. So when I started competing without anybody behind me, it was difficult to pick myself up. I lost that first fight and there was nobody to pat me on the shoulder and say, all right, we'll go back to the gym. We'll fix this. We'll fix this. We got this. We got your back. There was nobody there. And so it had an effect on me. And here's what happened. I went back. I had another fight. I lost another decision. And I started feeling like, well, I must not be very good at this, which is a silly thing to think at something you really haven't practiced very much at. I was training my 6-year-old daughter the other day in kicks, and I was showing her a new type of kick. She did about 3 of them and said, I'm not very good at kicking. And I laughed because obviously in her childhood mind she expects to be able to perform instantly. That's how children think. Small children think that way. Because they do not yet know the process of work and trial and error. It's when adults still think that way that's problematic. Many years later, I started working with a few different boxing coaches for the first time in my life. Because in Taekwondo, you don't box, except with your feet. And I had this boxing coach named Jason Chen, and awesome guy, awesome coach. And I remember overhearing some other folks in the gym kind of gossiping about me, saying, yeah, Ramsey's no good at boxing. I had only been training in boxing for a couple of months, and these guys said, yeah, he's no good at boxing. And I heard that, and I felt like, oh, well, yeah, that's true. Of course, I'm not a good boxer. I have not succeeded in boxing yet. And I just kind of took it for granted. That's how it's always going to be. That's what defines me. I'm not a good boxer. And then Jason Chen said something to them that changed my life. He said, no, Ramsey is good. And I don't know if he knew that I heard that, but I heard that, and that changed everything about my mentality. I thought, whoa, wait a minute. This guy believes in me. This guy believes that I have potential to be good. Because I knew what my limitations were. I knew what my inexperience was. What I did not know was the power of somebody having your back. The power of having a team and a coach behind you to push you in a positive direction with the power of the word. Words can build or they can tear down and destroy. The words you speak to yourself, super important, my friends. Make sure every word that comes out of your mouth regarding yourself pushes you in a positive direction. Likewise, those words have tremendous potential to push others in many different directions. But let's try to bring them in one that helps them improve and progress. So from that day forward, I started to see myself differently. I started to see myself as, hey, this is something I can figure out. This is something I can accomplish. And progress happened. So having a team behind you, man, highly recommend that. If you do not have a team behind you, get one. What's stopping you? What's holding you back? A lot of people ask me, hey, is this a good gym? Is that a good gym? Well, I don't know, because I can't just fly over to your country, wherever you are, try your gym and say, yeah, this is a good one, gets my check of approval. But I'll tell you what, having a gym to train at, having a coach that supports you and believes in you and pushes you in a positive direction, and having a team that has your back, that is legit. But after the beatdown, it takes time, man. You hear that expression, time heals all wounds? Well, yeah. Because eventually you'll figure it out. But having the team help you figure it out by your side, invaluable. Next question. Our next question comes from our friend Iridium Axel, who says, I'm a black belt in Tang Soo Do, and although I had the opportunity to spar throughout my training up to black belt, I hated sparring, and I did it sparingly up until 1 or 2 ranks below black, when I started sparring every week because I figured a black belt that can't defend himself is a joke. Understandable. So even now, all my techniques are good. I have tons of control, tons of power. Heck, I even worked boxing technique on the bags, but for some reason, I have trouble applying any good techniques except for the side kick and occasional roundhouse kick in any fights that give me a challenge. Almost as if my subconscious is just terrified of getting hit. Is there anything I can do to really start working all my techniques against a challenging opponent? Okay. You're right, your subconscious is terrified of getting hit. Now, ideally, I'd like to see a video of you sparring, and some of you have sent videos of sparring sessions to me, and I would love to get back to all of you on those, but 2 things off the top of my head. Your subconscious is terrified of getting hit, so change the way you spar. 2 ways. 1, start doing some either no touch sparring and or very light touch sparring. How will that help you get over the fear of getting hit? Well, here's the thing. When you spar in a way that actually threatens you with damage, the psychological effect of that is, as soon as it's sparring time, your body goes into self-preservation mode. It's going to expect damage. It's going to say, get out of here. And so your techniques are not going to be sharp. You're going to be reacting instead of acting, and that's no good. So when you start sparring light, very controlled, your body goes into a different mode, like, hey, this is okay. I'm not feeling threatened. I can act instead of react. And so you start getting comfortable making more intelligent choices. The second thing is start doing situational sparring drills. I made a whole video about the difference between the term sequence and drill, because a lot of martial artists use the word drill to mean just repeating an exercise over and over again, and that's fine, but that's not the way I use that expression. When I say drill, there is an element of competition. It's live. It's essentially sparring with very specific parameters, very specific guidelines you have to follow. Give yourself limitations and structure. So right now you're only throwing the side kick and the round kick sometimes. Okay? Give yourself a sparring drill, and again start light, touch, no contact, something that isn't going to threaten you, so you can act instead of react. And give yourself a goal. I will not throw any side kicks or round kicks during this sparring session. So you know you're not going to get hurt. You might get tagged. Make sure you're training with somebody who has a very tight level of control. That's very important. Somebody who's not going to spaz out and accidentally try to knock your head off, or purposefully try to knock your head off. Tell yourself, this round I'm going to throw this punch, or this kick, or this specific combination, or this specific movement that I don't usually do when we go live. So what happens? That starts getting in your muscle memory. So that when you increase the intensity, it comes out when you react. So your reaction is an intelligently programmed design instead of a flinchy instinct. So try those two things. Hope that helps. Let me know. Next question. Our next question comes from Nope Engi, who says, Ramsey, I have a question. How do you effectively pressure test a technique? Well, by definition, pressure testing a technique is testing it against pressure or resistance. So there are two ways we could go about this. One, is it a technique we know is legitimate because we have seen other people perform it successfully, repeatedly? For example, let's look at an armbar from jiu-jitsu. From a full mount position, you're mounting your opponent, you catch the arm, you pin their head, you roll back a little bit, you hyperextend the elbow by driving your hips into it, squeezing the legs, all these important little details there, and they will tap out or their arm will snap. So how do you pressure test that? Well, you spar, you roll, you grapple, and when you get into that position, you try to do the armbar while your opponent fights back. And this is going to teach you a bunch of things, what it's really like fighting somebody, attempting to do a technique which is fairly complex, under pressure, under stress. And you'll become quickly aware of all these little details, how you need to shift your weight, how you need to control the space, and so on. So that your technique doesn't just look similar to what's going on a screen or what your professor shows you in the gym, in the academy, whatever. But it actually works when the guy fights back. The second way we could go about pressure testing something is pressure testing something dubious that you've never actually seen work in a fight. For example, you're seeing some maybe self-defense, street fighting technique on YouTube. And this guy shows you something that looks a little too good to be true. How do we pressure test that? Well, the simplest way. First, the ultimate litmus test, mild resistance. Let's say we're doing a technique to break a wrist grab. Somebody grabs your wrist. Okay, have somebody grab your wrist and not let go. Try to hold on, whatever. Try to drag you around. And see if you can employ that technique. And if it works easily, okay, cool. And if it doesn't, there's a problem. But then you got to run that in other scenarios because, self-defense, fighting, it's chaotic. It's not a static, turn-based strategy game where it's like, all right, my turn, I grab your wrist. All right, my turn, I do the flippy thing. Aha, you have cleared the wrist grab. No, fighting doesn't work like that. It's chaotic. You're all over the place. So you got to test this stuff on a bunch of different circumstances. But start with that one. Mild resistance, good way to go. So yeah, spar, roll, grapple, add some resistance. Don't be nice to each other. Now if it's something like, will stabbing this guy in the face, gouging out his eyes, work in a fight? How do you pressure test that? Well, you can and you can't, you know. I hate those guys. I hate it, and hate means strongly dislike. A lot of people like to conflate the word hate with the most grievous of all sins. But all it means is you strongly dislike. I hate when people will say, my martial art totally works, but I can't show you because it's all eye pokes and groin kicks and stuff that's illegal in combat sports, because what I do is for the streets. In my experience, almost 100% of the time, those guys who say that have never pressure tested anything. Can you put yourself in a position against a resisting opponent to do those things? That's testable without hurting anybody. But if you cannot put yourself in a position to poke the eye or kick the groin or do whatever deadly ninja move you practice in your art, that's a problem, and you got to fix that. So position is super duper important. I know it's not as sexy or cool looking or fun as attacking, because that's what grabs our attention, but man, position is paramount. And if your technique ignores position in favor of some fancy, snappy-looking attack, just remember this: people are moving targets, and moving targets are hard to hit, man. Next question. Got a question from an anonymous commenter who says, how do you break bad habits? For example, porn addiction or drugs or things like that. Huh. Okay. Good question, man. So there are tons of people out there who struggle with addictions of all kinds. They feel stuck in this situation. Let me tell you about the time I got addicted to morphine. Hear me out. It didn't last very long, but hear me out. I ended up addicted to morphine at age 21. I ended up hospitalized for about 6 months straight. And while I was in the hospital, bedridden, hooked up to all these machines and stuff, I had a morphine drip attached to the IV, and there was a little button. And I could push this button at certain time intervals, and it would give me a hit of morphine. And I would feel this stuff go into my veins, and it kind of burns. It's a weird sensation. It burns. It's like, oh, and then it would kind of mask the pain. Not really make it go away, just mask it, like put this other layer over it. Weird sensation. I didn't like it, but I didn't realize that I had become addicted to it. So 6 months with this button, this little button I could push on demand to get that hit. And I didn't count how many times it happened. I just remember pushing that button from time to time when the pain became unbearable, which it often did. When I got out of the hospital, I was in college and I was living with some roommates at the time. I got out of the hospital. I was held together with surgical staples and was lying on the couch. And my roommates were in the same room and they were watching me. And one of them starts staring at me all weird. And he's like, "Ramsey, what are you doing?" I said, "What do you mean, what am I doing? I'm just lying here." He said, "No, what are you doing with your hand?" And I look at my hand. My hand is doing this. Completely out of my control, unconsciously, reaching for that button, for that hit of morphine. And And I look at my hand and I look at my roommate and I say, I'm not doing this. It's just happening by itself. And he said, why are you doing that, dude? And I said, I think I'm addicted to morphine. So, without the context of what was going on, everybody starts laughing like, what? Anyway. But I realized, man, so that's what it's like. I had no control over that action. But I didn't have the morphine drip, and so went through withdrawals for morphine, and that's how I kicked the habit, I guess, just not having it. The other day I was watching the Joe Rogan Experience podcast, listening to that here on YouTube, and this British gentleman was talking about addiction, which brought this story back to my mind. I started thinking, oh, that makes a lot more sense in the context of what he said. He started talking about how people who are addicted are often punished, and that makes it worse because they're put in this desperate situation where they feel like they need that next fix. Whereas he talked about people who have support systems tend to do better. People who have everything going right in their life, even though they might have the addictive substance or whatever it is available to them, don't feel the need for it as much as those who feel like everything is going wrong on a downward spiral, even though the substance or the behavior is equally addictive, if you will. And that got me thinking, how interesting that physiologically, I was so addicted to this stuff that my hand was just moving all by itself. Totally out of my control, and yet here I am, not a morphine addict anymore. In fact, that really didn't last any more than a month, I would say. But I remember my hand reaching out of my control from time to time, like, man, this is weird. But I was surrounded by positive people. I mean, my roommates were good guys. You know, I was in college. I had this structure in my life. I had my friends. I had my church. I had my family. You know, good stuff going on. Prospects. The future in front of me. And so the idea of, I gotta satiate this need so this itchy finger goes away, you know, that never even entered the equation. But without all that positive reinforcement, yeah, maybe that would have been a different story. So man, like I said previously, the power of positive thinking is powerful. And the negative power of punishment. A lot of people, if they fall off what's the word I'm looking for? They fall back into bad habits, will often beat themselves up like bad, whip themselves with the proverbial stick. Make themselves feel worse. Or maybe that's somebody else in your life making you feel worse about that. Like, how dare you looking at that filthy stuff? How could you take that garbage? And you probably feel bad enough about it already. One of my sisters, she used to smoke a lot. Used to smoke, used to drink, and she enjoyed it. It wasn't just, you know, an addiction. It was something she actually enjoyed. And when she got pregnant with her first daughter, that changed. She quit. Just 100% off. Didn't smoke again, didn't drink again. And I had known her, before she got pregnant, she had tried many, many times to quit. But it never worked. She went through these horrible withdrawal symptoms and just had to go back. So I asked her, how did you do it this time? What made the difference? And she said, my daughter. Because I found something that I wanted more than that next fix. More than that next cigarette. More than that next drink. I found something I wanted more. Find what you want more, my friend. And if you don't know what that is, get out there and search till you find it. Next question. Our friend Markel McKenzie says, what goes through your mind in a fight and in training? Are you reverting back to your training, trying to adapt to a situation, or what? I have trouble settling the chaos of the mind in almost every fight I can remember having. Does this get better with time? Clearly I need to spar more, but is there anything else I can do on my own to have more of a fighter's mindset? Okay, interesting question. What goes through my mind in a fight? Well, I'll tell you what has gone through my mind in the past. I've had a bunch of different types of fights. Taekwondo matches, American kickboxing, Muay Thai, Sanda, K1, mixed martial arts, jiu-jitsu, catch wrestling, all these different combat sports. When I started out competing in traditional martial arts, there was a lot of, I would say, unnecessary anxiety going on. It was like, whoa. Fighting like martial artists, this is like a kung fu movie, but in real life, And so there's this huge build-up without the big payoff, because it's just a little couple of kids in belts and costumes hopping around kicking at each other. But in my mind, I built it up like it was this big thing, and so at first I ended up getting really, really tired. And so after about 30 seconds, what was going through my mind was, holy crap, I'm tired. Oh man, when will this round be over? Oh, make it be over. Oh, just last to the bell, just last till it's over. So again, that at my beginning stage, that's what was going on in my mind in fights. My first pro kickboxing match, making that transition from Taekwondo and karate to American kickboxing. What's going on in my mind? Well, it varied from round to round. The first round was, okay, I'm going to do this kick. Oh, he just punched me. Oh, he punched me again. Oh man, I kind of hate this. Oh, this is different. Oh, don't fall down. Just stay up. Hit him back. Oh man. And technique kind of went out the window, and it was just all reaction. Second round, he pins me up against the ropes. Boom, liver shot. Oh, never felt one of those before. Oh, that sucks. Oh, I feel like I'm falling down, but he's got me pinned up against the ropes, and all I can think is, don't fall down. That'll be so embarrassing if I fall down in front of all of these people and lose like that. Oh, don't fall down. Round 3, just stick with it to the bell. Oh, getting punched in the face. Oh, punched in the guts. Kick him back. Get at least one good kick in there. Boom. Okay, I got him. Yeah. Oh, he's punched me again. That didn't finish him. So that was going through my mind, my first pro prize fight. Fast forward a bunch of years, a bunch of decades. What happens now when I spar with people, when I get in a scrap? It's different. It's different. Now I'm thinking, how do I teach this person? Now I'm very calm, very composed. Now, with decades of experience, instead of reacting, I can act. I can think, and I can make conscious choices, and I can be very relaxed. And I've developed this understanding of what attacks can do to you, of what actually damages you, what is really dangerous and what isn't. How to avoid what's dangerous. Understand, yeah, I'll be fine here. So, yeah, you need to spar more. You need to have more experience. You need to have more life experience. That's the simple, short answer. But what can you do right now? Right now, to stop reverting back to your animal instincts and start acting upon your training and making those conscious choices? Well, the thing is, in a fight, I say act and react because under pressure we don't really make conscious choices. So make sure that when you are training, you train a lot and you repeat the movements that you want to use in a fight a lot, under a bunch of different circumstances and a bunch of different drills a lot, over and over and over again, and consistently, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, so that when you get clocked, when you're seeing stars, when your body goes on autopilot, when you are reacting instead of acting, that you will react intelligently, and you will do that thing that you did again and again and again, because it's in your muscle memory. One thing I started telling myself a few years after that first prize fight, when I would step in the ring or in the cage, and all those nerves and the anxiety would start coming, because it always does, I would tell myself, it's okay. This is happening now. This is my life now. There's no escape here, so I will bridle these feelings, and I will be here in this moment, and I will live this moment, and I will enjoy this moment, come what may. It's a process getting to that state of mind, but make that a goal. Because if you don't make a goal, you won't accomplish it. Next question. Our next question comes from our friend Tulika Singh, who has been training in MMA and jiu-jitsu, and he's concerned about the sweat, because he sweats a lot. And he's written kind of a long question, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, but basically he sweats a lot, and the sweat goes through his gi and gets on his training partners, and they don't complain about it, but he's worried about it. And he wants to know if he should wear socks when he trains, when he does jiu-jitsu, because with his feet covered, it seems like his feet don't sweat so much. Okay. A lot of people are worried about this. It's not just you. A lot of people are worried about this. Some people refuse to do jiu-jitsu because of the sweat, especially if you train in a very hot, humid environment. I mean, Shanghai in the summer is so hot, man. Some people wonder about those videos that I have where I'm in the gym with my shirt off and they think I'm just trying to show off my muscles, my non-existent muscles or something. No, it's because it's hot. It's like a sauna here in the summer. And so when we grapple, there is sweat everywhere. I mean, I remember one day, one hot summer, after rolling, after wrestling, after training, there was about an inch of liquid on the mat. We had to get a squeegee to get that off of there. So, but nobody complained because that's just part of the sport, you know. So to me, it's not not a big deal at all because, I sweat, my training partners sweat, there's sweat. And you get in a fight in the cage and then you add blood into that mix. And not everybody responds well to blood. Man, some people see they're bleeding and they go from being indestructible to being kittens almost instantly. So, man, bodily fluids. Here's the thing about bodily fluids that is interesting. Bodily fluids outside of the body for some reason tend to repulse us. You take this, for example. You have some water. Take a sip of water. No big deal. What's in your mouth right now? Saliva. Swallow it. No big deal. Now, take that saliva in your mouth, spit it in a cup of water. Now drink that cup of water. Ew! What? That's gross. Wait, you were just okay swallowing the water in the cup. You were just okay swallowing the saliva in your mouth. But your own saliva in the cup, what happened there? Bodily fluids outside of the body. Gross! But sweat, man, you can become accustomed to just about anything. Now, sometimes people come into my gym and they want to train with their socks on, and that's fine. I mean, there's a lot less friction. And so it's going to affect your game quite a bit. So you'll be slipping and sliding when you need to bridge. Your feet are going to come out from under you. When you want to work your takedowns, your feet are going to slip out from under you. So that's going to be problematic. But yeah, if you want to train with your socks on, if your coach, if the gym, if they don't have a policy against it, if they're okay with it, sure, put them on. If it makes you feel better about yourself, that's fine. I don't see a problem there. I don't see a problem, but just a piece of hygiene advice, make sure before you train that you shower so that when you do sweat, it's not sweat mixed with dirt and body odor and bacteria and all this other stuff. Clean sweat. That's the best kind. Next question. Our friend Ricky Kime says, "Hey Ramsey, could you speak more on your experiences cornering for people? I'd like to hear more about that." Okay. Yeah, sure. I'll tell you one of my cornering secrets. In the sport of mixed martial arts, the cornermen are allowed to sit cage side and not move from that spot. They can't run around to the other side, so they have to speak out. So it's very important that you distinguish yourself from the crowd. So if you're screaming and yelling, that turns into static because everybody else there is screaming and yelling. You need to project yourself loudly but calmly. This is what I always tell my fighters. I will be the calm but loud voice in the corner while everyone else is screaming. So you got to work on the voice. That's very, very important, being able to project it. All right, the second thing, I always tell my fighters, bring the fight to our corner so that you can hear my voice, so that your opponent can hear my voice, and so that your opponent cannot hear his corner. It's a technique I learned from the great Jeremy Horn. Go check out his channel. He just started uploading a bunch of his old fights. Jeremy Horn, former UFC champion. Subscribe to that dude, man. He's got some awesome, awesome fights up on his channel, and nobody's watching them right now. So go show Mr. Horn some love. So I learned this watching the way Jeremy Horn coached his fighters. He would always have them bring the fight to his corner so that he could talk to them, so that they couldn't hear their coaches, and that he could communicate directly with them without having to scream across the ring. The third thing, I learned this from Ricky Lundell. I learned this by competing against one of his guys in a grappling tournament. So Ricky Lundell is awesome. This dude is absolutely amazing. He coaches UFC fighters. He He won some grappling championships, jiu-jitsu black belt under Pedro Sauer. Yeah, he wrestled at Iowa State. Just awesome grappler, awesome coach. And I'm grappling against one of his guys. This was, man, long time ago. So this dude comes out and he's a tough guy. And he gets a takedown. I'm on the bottom. I'm working my guard. I'm working a rubber guard transition because I loved rubber guard. I was all about 10th Planet technique back then. And I'm working toward setting up an omoplata. Something I could pull off in the gym really well. And I'm on my way. I'm making progress toward that omoplata. I've got the shoulder pinned. I've got his posture broken. I got the mission control position, all that good stuff. Switch over to the chill dog position. Yes, these are the real names if you're not familiar with that. And I hear Ricky Lindell from the sidelines call out to his athlete and say, "Don't worry. That rubber guard stuff doesn't work." And that got to me. I heard that. Ricky Lindell was he was my grappling hero. I mean, I saw this guy compete. I saw what he could do. I was like, I want to be like Ricky. Ricky's amazing. And when I heard him say what I was doing didn't work, I loosened up, I let go. What happened? My opponent got out and he passed my guard and he squished me. And he won the match. And afterward, I had an epiphany. Wait a minute. Ricky wasn't talking to his fighter. He was talking to me. It was very important that I received that information so that I would change my game plan. A lot of coaches do this by saying, "He's tired. Don't worry, you're doing fine. He's tired." A lot of you have probably heard this if you've competed. You get close to the other guy's corner, and the cornerman says, "Yeah, he's tired. You're fine, Billy," or whatever the guy's name is. And it pisses you off. You're like, "I'm not tired. I can go for days." And so what do? You ramp it up a little bit. And then you make yourself tired. They'll say something that gets under your skin, makes you a little angry, a little upset, makes you perform differently. It makes you react instead of act. It makes you stupid. Excellent cornering trick right there. So there was this fight. I was coaching this guy, Travis Timmerman. I probably told this story before on my channel, but I'll tell it again. Travis Timmerman, tough dude. Not the most technical, not at this time. But his opponent beats him up a little bit, gets on top, starts hammering him away on him with his fists and his elbows. Travis is bleeding. And I look up at the referee, and the referee looks like he wants to stop this fight, and so I think I have to do something. But Travis is a little out of it. He is not in the right situation to receive technical instructions on how to improve his position. This is going to be a TKO in just a few moments. So I look at his opponent, and I project my voice at his opponent, and I say, "Travis, his liver is exposed on the left side. It's right there. Hit it." Not that that would have done anything, but the opponent postured up and looked over at his left side. The liver is on the right side. But he looks on his left side. Like, what? Postures up, compromises his position. Travis feels this and reacts. Sweeps, climbs on top. Lays down the fists, wins the fight. What happened there? I was talking to the other guy. Indirectly, of course. But that is how you do it. You give that other person this subconscious thought. You want them to believe it was their idea to make that choice. Because when they do that, They will comply. So those are some of my cornering tricks for you. Hope that helped. Use them wisely. Next question. Our friend Goju Boxer says, can you do a respectful review of the Gracie Combatives curriculum, specifically the pros and cons, drilling techniques for months versus rolling immediately? Okay. So I have looked at Henner and Hiram Gracie's Gracie Combatives curriculum. And it's basic jiu-jitsu. Now, how do you get good at basic jiu-jitsu? By practicing it, by rolling, by drilling, by doing all that stuff you do at a gym. So my first impression right there is to say, what would be a better option than buying the Gracie Combatives program and watching it, go join a jiu-jitsu gym and train at a jiu-jitsu gym with real live people, with an actual hands-on instructor who is going to teach you all that important stuff and so much more. Now, the second part of the question, the pros and cons of drilling techniques for months versus rolling immediately. And by drilling, I assume you mean sequencing, meaning going through the motions against a compliant partner over and over and over again. That is one step of the learning process, but only one. Okay. You need to sequence, then you need to drill. Drilling is with resistance, as I mentioned before. Watch my video, sequences versus drilling versus rolling or sparring. Maybe I'll put a link to that one in here somewhere. But man, that's a super, super important distinction. So I believe it's important to train people to spar on day one. And I know a lot of people get mad and emotional about that, like, what? But they don't even know things yet. Yeah, this is part of the process of getting to know things. And a lot of people have some screwy ideas about what sparring means. No, I don't mean put them in there and beat them up. Teach them. I mean, watch my sparring videos. I got a whole playlist of videos of me sparring with my students. What am I doing? I'm teaching them. Not trying to beat them up, trying to teach them. Radical difference there. So if you're not doing that early and often, that's a gross misuse of your time, in my opinion. So yeah, Gracie Combatives, I mean, it's not bad information. It's good information. It's presented in a professional manner and could certainly be a good supplement to your training if you are training. But I go back to my original advice, just join a jiu-jitsu gym if you want to learn jiu-jitsu. That simple. Next question. Our last question comes from Vagabond Art, who says, some random questions, coach. Do you like yerba mate? Sí, chamigo, por supuesto que me gusta el yerba mate. Mate, if you're not familiar, is a drink from Argentina. They also drink it in Uruguay, other parts of South America. But yeah, it's huge in Argentina, around Buenos Aires. I spent a couple of years there as an LDS missionary, like 20, 21, 22 years ago. And yeah, it is green if you're not familiar with it. It kind of looks, smells, and tastes like alfalfa, which it's not a bad thing. I come from a small farming town, and one of my favorite smells in the whole world is fresh cut alfalfa. It's amazing. You go out on a summer morning when it's still a little bit cold out. It's cold in the mornings in Idaho in the summer, but it gets real hot in the middle of the day. Anyway, that's a great smell, and so yerba mate reminds me a lot of that. So a lot of people get a little offended when I say it tastes like grass, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. So yeah, that is something I enjoy, but I haven't had it for, like 20 years. It's hard to find here in Shanghai, China. Second part of the question, how would you do, or how do you handle training as age advances? You seem to be in perfect condition right now at age 40, but do you ever consider how you will adapt your training as you become older? In a related note to the previous question, in your previous videos you've mentioned training older, let's say 50 plus, without intention of offending anyone, with and without experience. Are there any fundamental differences you've noticed or learned in the approach to their training? Okay. This question reminds me of my old Shotokan karate instructor. A lot of people out there are really surprised to learn that an MMA coach has experience in traditional martial arts. And yeah, I did a bunch of them. But here's the thing. Most serious mixed martial artists have experience in traditional martial arts. A lot of them are black belts in multiple styles. Case in point. But yeah, I had this Shotokan karate instructor, and he was super intense. He was, actually, I was about to say he was an older guy, but he was my age back then. He just looked and seemed and acted older. Complained about his bad knees and stuff. But come to think of it, he really wasn't that old of a guy. I mean, I'm 40 years old. He was about 40 when I was training with him. It just seemed like he was a lot older than he really was. And I remember I was doing Shotokan and Taekwondo at the same time. And he knew that, and he would always poo-poo Taekwondo and say, yeah, Taekwondo might seem like it's great right now because, you know, you're young and flexible and you can throw those fast high kicks, but when you're my age, that's not going to be the case. When you're my age and you need a hip replacement and both knees are totally destroyed and you're a decrepit old man, this is an exaggeration, hyperbole, but not by much, really. Then you're going to have to change your whole strategy and do it the way I teach instead. And I just kind of accepted that. Like, oh, okay, yeah, when I'm 40, I'm going to be a decrepit old man like my karate teacher. And I'm going to have to forget all about high kicks and anything that requires a great deal of athleticism or flexibility or persistence or training or hard work or any of that good stuff that I always tell you guys to work on today. That I always try to teach you guys through example to work on today, regardless of how old you are. But I accepted that because that's what my culture, my upbringing taught me. That when you get older, you stop. When you get older, you curl up and die. Experience has taught me that's not true. Experience has taught me that in spite of the fact that as we get older, the body does break down and age and eventually die, it doesn't happen as fast as we think it does when we're 20 years old. At age 20, I was definitely faster than I am now. But we're talking about incrementally. I'm a much better fighter now. I'm much smarter now. I'm much more experienced now. Much better at putting myself in the right positions now, so I don't have to be as fast or as frantic or waste energy. I'm much more efficient. So learning efficiency, yeah, that's huge for longevity. But what am I going to be like in 20 years? Man, when I was 21, as I mentioned previously, I ended up hospitalized, man. I almost ended up needing a colostomy bag for the rest of my life. Fortunately, I dodged that bullet, man. But I remember thinking, I'm done. It's over. There's nothing left. I remember feeling like I would probably die in my early 20s, and the doctors I talked to seemed to confirm that notion. And that's terrible for you, psychologically. Because what goes on in the mind ultimately becomes the reality of the body. If we allow it to. If we work toward that end. So how will I handle training as age advances? So many people are shocked that I am able to do what I do at age 40. It's not shocking, though. The recipe is very simply: train consistently. Do something every day to get stronger. Do something every day to get more flexible. Do something every day to get more technical. 3 simple things that will ensure that you will be able to perform as well as you are able for as long as possible. It's not a recipe for immortality, but it is a recipe for quality of life and quality of training for the long run. Take care of your instrument, this body, this vessel you live in, and it will take care of you. So what about people who start training when they are older, like over 50, and they've never trained before? Okay. Well, that's a really similar situation to most other people who have never trained before. People in terrible shape people who are terrible athletes, people who are at high risk of injury, people who are weak and need to build up their strength and flexibility and all those things, who need to build up their athletic attributes. Well, guess what? You can do that at any age. There have been so many studies about strength training performed on older people. And guess what? When older people do strength training, they get stronger. When older people train to get flexible, they get more flexible. So what do I do when I train older people who have never trained before? I give them what they need when they need it. I do train a few people who are over 50. Got one of my clients, a good dude, man, guy named Paul. I want to get him on my podcast, man. He's a psychologist, super interesting. He doesn't seem to think he's that interesting, but he's a super interesting guy. But yeah, he's over 50. He started training in martial arts in his 50s, and that's awesome. And yeah, obviously I'm not going to put on the gloves and try to beat this guy up. I don't do that with anybody. Unless they specifically are training for a fight where they need that kind of pressure. So the way I train Paul, yeah, it's different. We're working on athletic attributes largely. Because athletic attributes are what are going to help him. I asked Paul, why do you train? Why do you train consistently? And he told me, because I want to walk in the hills of England, his home country, when I'm 80. I want to be able to do that. I want to be able to be physically fit enough to do that at that age. I don't want to fall apart right now. That's awesome. So generally, people who start training in their 50s don't have delusions of becoming UFC champion of the world. So I ask people what their goals are, and I help facilitate those goals. Hey, thanks for the questions. Once again, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments down below or email me at ramseydewey@gmail.com. Thanks for watching. Now get out there and train.